People often think Rangers are forged from muscle and firepower. But what happens when a new recruit brings along a notebook and a pencil? In my teammates' eyes, I was just dead weight. In Sergeant First Class Garrick's eyes, I was just a clown, doing useless things. Yet, when a torrential downpour turned a training exercise into a fight for survival, all eyes turned to the weakest link. Would they trust a tattered map, or the observations of the one they scorned? And in the end, who truly knows how to survive? My name is Leland Mercer, a frail-looking recruit, my hands always smudged with ink from topographical sketches. In my pocket, I always carried a notebook and pencil items, many considered childish toys amidst Fort Moore, where Rangers forged muscle and spirit. But to me they were tools, a second set of eyes. How I turned details into a survival advantage. My father, a retired colonel, once told me I was only fit for books and drawing. I was here to prove that even those could be weapons. And that's precisely why Sergeant First Class Garrick noticed me. Garrick was part of the heat here, a walking rock who never sweated. His voice was like gravel scraping together. The first time he noticed me was at the end of a long ruck march, while the rest of the team huddled around the water cooler. I sat a bit apart, opened my waterproof notebook, and quickly sketched the outline of a distant tree line, noting landmarks not on the map: wildlife trail, potential water source, prevailing wind southwest, eastern slope, will provide better cover from wind. Mercer! His shout startled a few people. I looked up. Garrick was towering over me, his shadow enveloping me. What the hell are you doing? Taking notes, Sergeant First Class, I replied, my voice steady. He sneered, a smile completely devoid of humor. Notes? I see you drawing. You think this is art class? You going to win life with a pencil? Throw it away. I remained silent, closing my notebook, my thumb unconsciously tracing the worn spine before tucking it into my pocket. Answer me, Mercer. No, Sergeant First Class. Good, he growled. Because we don't need artists here. We need soldiers. Get in position, start pushing. I'll count, and you'll go until you drop. 1. Let's see if that useless drawing helps you get stronger. I immediately got into position, hands flat on the scorching ground. His count was steady in my ears, but my mind remained cold. For a moment my father's image, a stern colonel, flashed before me with his chilling words. Your place is at a desk, not on a battlefield. No, this is my battlefield. Around me I could feel the eyes of my teammates. No pity, just curiosity and a touch of disdain. As I stumbled to my feet, Diaz, the biggest and most blunt guy on the team, walked past, giving me a once-over. Hey, he said, his voice devoid of malice, just matter of fact. I don't care how good you draw, as long as you don't slow the team down. I just nodded. Garrick's attention didn't stop at words. In subsequent training sessions, my ruck was always heavier than everyone else's. When sweat dripped into my eyes, he would often walk by, a smug smile on his face. This is real training. Only the strongest survive, I replied with a cold smile inwardly. With every agonizing step over the harsh terrain, I observed more meticulously, marking every rock, every tree in my notebook. The weight he placed on my shoulders only sharpened my eyes. That night, while everyone else was lost in exhausted sleep, I sat on my bunk, light off, flipping back to the afternoon sketches. Garrick saw the notebook as my weakness. Diaz and the others saw it as potential dead weight. They were wrong. This was my weapon. They wanted me to prove myself with strength. Fine. But I would win my own way. I wouldn't argue. Words held no value here. I would show them. Garrick's attention became part of my daily routine. Every training session was a new challenge, and I was always at the top of his annoyance list. During map reading exercises, he always chose the darkest spot for me, with only a flickering flashlight. Rangers have to operate in all conditions. Mercer, he'd say, his voice full of satisfaction. He didn't know that in the dark, I relied less on my eyes and more on my spatial memory. But the peak of his pressure came during a booby trap clearing exercise. We were practicing in a simulated forest, our mission to identify and neutralize improvised tripwires. My team was moving cautiously, following standard procedures. "Stop," I whispered, just loud enough for Sergeant Cole to hear. The whole team froze. Cole turned, frowning. I pointed to a seemingly safe, open patch of ground ahead. "The terrain here isn't natural," I explained. "The leaves are disturbed in a faint straight line, not randomly, and it's against the wind direction from the hillside. And there's a small patch of compacted dirt, only the width of a boot sole. Like someone knelt here for a long time to set something." Garrick, who was supervising from a distance, walked over. "What's going on?" Cole reported my findings. Garrick looked at me, then at the open patch of ground, and smirked. "Mercer's using his imagination again," he said loudly for the whole team to hear. "Procedures say to check suspicious points like tree roots, trails. This is just an open patch of ground." Then he turned to me, his eyes hardening. "Listen here, Mercer. I've seen creative geniuses like you before." He thought he was smarter than the procedure, and that creativity cost a good soldier his legs. "Here. We follow the book." "Got it." After that, he fell unusually silent. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, not anger, but an old pain. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, and I suddenly understood that his harshness wasn't just aimed at me, but was a battle with the ghosts of his own past. "Keep moving," he ordered. Still, I didn't stop. When Garrick turned away, I quietly whispered to Cole and Diaz, pointing out solid footholds on the edge of the clearing, branches that could serve as handholds. To Garrick, these small contributions were irrelevant. Most of my teammates ignored them. But as the squad moved past, I saw Martinez, who was right behind Diaz, hesitate for a second. He quickly glanced down at the spot I indicated, then looked at me, his eyes no longer scornful but thoughtful for a moment before he continued. Each time I felt the pressure like a crucible. But instead of being discouraged, I focused even more. Every step, every observation, I turned pressure into data. Garrick wanted to test my mental endurance. Good. I would show him I existed in my own way. Not with words, but with precision. My chance came on a night when even the heavens seemed to want to test us. It was the start of a 36-hour silent land navigation exercise through the forest. The sky had been overcast since the afternoon. And just a few hours later, rain poured down as if to tear the forest in two. Rain gear was flimsy nylon, water seeping through our uniforms, chilling streams running down our backs. When dividing the areas, Garrick looked directly at me, a barely perceptible smile flashing across his face. Our team, led by Sergeant Cole, was assigned Sector C, the box. It was a cursed patch of land in Fort Moore's whispered stories, a tangled mess of swamps, crisscrossing creeks, and vegetation so dense that daylight struggled to penetrate. Our mission was to reach 3 rendezvous points deep within it. "Good luck, Mercer," Garrick said, his voice loaded with hidden meaning. "Try not to let your creativity drown the whole team." Cole took the map, folded it neatly, then signaled for the team to move out. No one objected, simply because an order was an order. I also stayed silent, just quietly followed, my ruck heavy as a boulder on my shoulders. We started moving. The first few hours were okay, but then the rain started, relentless and chilling. The map in Cole's hand quickly turned into a soggy mess of paper, the ink lines beginning to bleed. Visibility dropped to just a few feet. We reached the first rendezvous point at dusk, soaked and exhausted. The rain showed no sign of stopping. As night fully descended, the forest transformed into a different world, dark and full of strange sounds. We slowed our pace, every step tentative. According to what was left of the map, to reach the second rendezvous point, we had to cross a creek marked shallow, fordable. After nearly an hour of struggling through mud, we heard the rush of water ahead. Cole raised his flashlight, trying to illuminate the path. Its weak light only showed a murky, much wider than expected, torrent of water swirling over rocks. "Prepare to cross," Cole ordered, his voice tinged with hesitation. "Stay close together." The team began preparing ropes, faces tense. I gripped my ruck straps tighter. My feet froze. What I saw didn't match the map, and I knew, if we stepped in, we wouldn't be a full squad anymore. Cole gestured. Everyone adjusted their straps, preparing to wade in. The swift water splashed white foam under the red flashlight beam. I saw Diaz's foot touch the water's edge. Hold up. My voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the noise of the rain and rushing water. Everyone froze, turning towards me. Cole lowered his flashlight, shining it directly at my face. "What is it, Mercer?" Everyone turned back. Garrick wasn't here, but I still saw the same skeptical look reflected in Diaz's face. "We can't cross here," I said, my eyes fixed on the dark water. "This creek isn't like the map anymore," Diaz grumbled. "Dangerous? The map says shallow, so it's shallow. You think you're smarter than the Army Map Service, Mercer?" I didn't answer him. Instead, I shone my flashlight on a log spinning in a whirlpool near the bank. "Look!" I yelled, over the rain. "The log isn't floating straight. An undertow is pulling it in. Look at the branches caught on that tree trunk. They're nearly a meter above the water level, meaning the water rose very quickly. On this bank, the earth has freshly eroded. Step down there. The current will sweep your feet out from under you, and your ruck will drag you down before you can react. This isn't a creek. It's a water trap." I knelt, pointing to the soil on the bank. Fresh erosion. Collapsed earth. Slipping edge. If you step down, your ruck will pull you straight into the current. Then I looked up, directly at Cole. The slope upstream. The rainfall since we started. This water is flowing at least 3 times faster than this morning. Going down there is suicide. Diaz frowned. "Great. Now we're trusting your imagination instead of the map." "We're here to follow procedures, Mercer." Cole was silent. Rain lashed his face, the tattered map in his hand almost torn. I saw him struggling. For a moment, I caught his eye. Not a reckless look, but a calculated one, as if he was weighing some memory. Then Cole folded the map, stuffing it into his jacket pocket. He signaled the team. "All right. We're finding a detour." He turned to me. "Mercer, lead the way." All eyes converged on me. Diaz took a deep breath, clenched his ruck straps, but said nothing more. I just nodded, slowly stepping forward, my red flashlight sweeping over the turbulent water behind us. For the first time, I wasn't an outcast anymore. The detour was far from easy. It was twice as long, leading us along slippery slopes, clinging to rotten roots, and wading through waist-deep depressions. Every step was a struggle. Mud sank up to our knees, sucking at our boots as if to swallow us whole. Gasping breaths mingled with the rain lashing our faces. The team's morale hit rock bottom. The trust Cole had placed in me was stretched to its breaking point. I could feel it about to snap. Diaz's eyes were bloodshot, his shoulders hunched. He was the most miserable. He was a big man, and his own weight made him sink deeper into the mud. After slipping for the 3rd time in a row, he roared, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and anger. "Damn it, Mercer! Do you even know where you're going? Or are we just wandering around in circles for nothing?" I didn't turn back. "Keep moving, Diaz. There's a sinkhole to the left." My answer was so cold and direct that he froze. He glanced to his left, where his weak flashlight beam only illuminated a dark pool of water. Curious, he picked up a broken branch and poked it down. The branch sank deep without hitting bottom. He pulled his hand back, heart pounding. Without that warning, he could have stepped in and been seriously injured. Diaz didn't say thank you, but from that moment on, he stopped grumbling. He started walking right behind me, placing his feet precisely where I had stepped. It wasn't obedience, but an unspoken acknowledgement. The whole team realized it too. They began to move as a single unit, sticking close together, their trust no longer placed in the tattered map, but in my every step. I wasn't just leading the way. I observed every branch, every rock, reading the forest like a living map. I didn't just have eyesight. I also had the endurance forged by Garrick's heavy rucks. We reached the final rendezvous point at dawn, looking like ghosts who had just risen from the earth. Our clothes were torn, we were covered in mud, shivering from cold and exhaustion, but there was something different in our eyes. No more skepticism, just fatigue, and a newfound belief forged through trial by fire. We were the last team back. Sergeant First Class Garrick was waiting, arms crossed. When he saw our miserable state, a mocking smile appeared on his face. "Look who's last," he said, his voice full of satisfaction. "What's wrong, Mercer? Too busy stopping to draw a landscape?" The team was silent, too tired to react. I looked directly at Garrick, saying nothing. Sergeant Cole stepped forward, standing tall despite his exhaustion. He looked at his soldiers, then at me, and I saw a surprising pride in his eyes. They had faced a choice between procedure and reality, and they had chosen correctly. "Sergeant First Class," Cole reported, his voice clear, echoing in the still morning air. "We are late because we had to take a detour. The creek on the route, according to Private Mercer's observations, had become a deadly, swift current. He found another safe route for the team." Garrick froze. The smile on his face solidified. He stared at Cole, as if he couldn't believe his ears, then glanced at me. The mockery vanished, replaced by an unreadable silence. He couldn't refute the report of a reliable sergeant. He didn't apologize. He didn't praise. He just looked us over, then mumbled, his voice hoarse. "Get some rest." Cole nodded, turned to signal us. I clearly saw the quiet pride in his eyes, though no words were spoken. And Garrick, for the first time since I set foot in Fort Moore, he hadn't won. No need for apologies, no need for praise. That silence alone was enough, unspoken acknowledgement. And for us, it meant more than any words of praise. After that fateful rainy night, everything changed. Not with an order or a declaration, but with the smallest things. The very next morning, as the team was cleaning their rifles under the shelter's awning, Diaz sat down next to me. He didn't look directly at me, just mumbled. "Hey, Mercer," he said softly. "Next time, if you see something, just say it." I just nodded. It was a ranger's apology, and it was worth more than 1,000 words. Just a short sentence. But I understood. It wasn't just Diaz's words, but the voice speaking for the whole team. From that moment, I was no longer an outsider. In the following days, Garrick no longer called my name to mock me. He was still strict, still pushed us to our limits. But the personal targeting, the contemptuous glances, disappeared. Occasionally during training, I would catch him observing me from a distance, not with a scrutinizing look, but with a complex reevaluation. Every time I opened my notebook, he would just glance over without saying anything. That silence was the biggest concession from a man like Garrick. From then on, my position in the team was different. Sergeant Cole began to actively seek my input during small planning sessions. "Mercer, notice anything special about this area?" he would ask before deploying the formation. I started sharing my observations, not just about the terrain, but also about movement, how to utilize darkness. My teammates began to listen. I taught them how to look at erosion marks to predict water flow, how to observe foliage to discern wind direction. No need for notes, just keen eyes, and a mind willing to remember. Gradually, my notebook was no longer an object of ridicule, but became an asset to the entire team. I had become an indispensable part, not through brute strength, but through the very thing Garrick once called useless. We still struggled, still covered in mud and sweat, but this time it was different. I was no longer alone. I was a part of them. My story at Fort Moore culminated a few weeks later. The meeting room was cramped, cold white fluorescent lights casting down on faces hardened by sun and rain. Maps were spread across a folding table. Training officers stood along the sides, silently observing. This was the planning session for the final culminating exercise, the test that would determine who was worthy of wearing the Ranger tab. Garrick stood at the head of the table, his voice like grinding steel. "We will move through 3 areas, rendezvousing at Point Bravo. This primary approach route," he pointed at the map, his pen marking a line across a rugged, stream-filled hillside, "is the most dangerous. A mistake here, and the whole team will be lost. After explaining the primary route, he suddenly stopped. His hand, pointing at the map, paused at the edge of a dense swamp, marked restricted area, undefined terrain. The room fell silent. Garrick frowned slightly, his other hand going to his chin, a sign that he was genuinely contemplating, not just issuing orders. His gaze swept across the crowd, past seasoned officers and sergeants, and then it stopped, locking onto me, standing humbly at the back. Garrick said nothing for a moment, just looked straight at me. Then, he gave a decisive jerk of his chin, a brief, military gesture, both an order and an acknowledgement. Only then did he speak. His voice still gruff but devoid of any sarcasm. "Mercer, come here." I stepped forward, silence enveloping the room. All eyes were on me. Garrick handed me a marker. "Sketch me the safest route through that damn swamp. I want to see what the map doesn't show." My heart beat slow, steady. No glory, no applause. This wasn't favoritism. This was an order, and also the highest recognition a man like Garrick could give. I stepped up, taking the pencil. Everyone's eyes followed. I didn't need a lengthy explanation, just strong, clear lines indicating where the mud would swallow boots, where dry strips of land could support a whole squad, where high ground offered control of the sight lines. When I stepped back, Garrick gave a nearly imperceptible nod. He turned away, continuing the meeting as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But I knew. They knew too. I had won. Not with muscle, not with a shot fired. I won with persistence, with my eyes and the notebook they once ridiculed. And now, I had earned the most important thing at Fort Moore: respect. That evening, as I sat on my bunk, cleaning my compass, Garrick walked past the barracks. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just casually placed something on the empty bunk next to mine, a dry clink. When his shadow had disappeared, I looked over curiously. It was a brand new Write in the Rain notebook, military issue, and a set of metal-cased technical pencils, a silent gift, an unspoken order. Keep doing your work, and do it well.